So backsides have become a priority for guys. If you've got the January-February issue of Men's Health US, which looks like this, you're gonna find me on page 71. So on page 71, basically I was interviewed about some of the benefits of building your booty, strength, and for aesthetics for men. So I cover some of my top exercises within that article. So today's YouTube, we're gonna go over those exercises and some variations of them, how you can maximize your booty gains for men. So whether you're a partner and you know your husband's got a bit of a pancake butt and you need to work on them, on building that, or whether you're very aware that you've got a bit of a pancake butt and you want to kind of build that yourself, then we're going to be diving into those exercises today. So come follow along and I'll share some of my best tips based on my interview in Men's Health Magazine. So what I'm going to do is take you through each of the exercises that I actually covered in that article, and then I'm going to show you some slight different variations of those that you can use as well. So I'll show you the exercise first, and then I'll explain why you might use the exercise or the benefits behind the exercise. Exercise number one that I included in the article was a barbell hip thrust. So I'm just going to show you the real basic setup for this. And if you know anything obviously about me, then you've seen me share this 1,000,001 times now, okay? But it's always worth just having that reminder. So standard barbell, all I've done is I've just kind of set my bench lengthways. Make sure you do have a bar pad for this. I know some people can handle it without a bar pad, but it can kind of aggravate that pubic symphysis if you kind of repeat that. So I would always suggest some kind of bar pad or an Eric's pad, okay? You're gonna roll it on, and then you're just gonna hike yourself up into position. Now, the key here really with this one is to make sure that at the top of the movement that your shins are completely vertical, okay? That will ensure that you're working your glutes and not so much your hamstrings or your quads. So we're gonna use the scoop technique with this, okay? So bow all the way down to the floor, and then what you're gonna do is imagine kind of scooping your pelvis or your pubic bone up towards your rib cage, okay? So here, scoop your pelvis. Here, chin stays down, rib cage stays down, squeeze your glutes hard at the top, and then all the way down, show your butt off to the floor, nice big stretch, and that scoop technique up towards the top, keeping your chin and ribs down. So here, full range of motion, and squeeze, okay? Here, full range of motion, and squeeze. If you notice your bench just slightly tipping over like mine was there, then it tends to be a sign that you're using your quads a little bit too much, that you're pressing back into the bench. If that's the case, then just make sure obviously that you're really focusing on driving your hips up and kind of driving through that horizontal motion with your hips coming through as opposed to pressing back. What you can also do is angle the bench slightly backwards and put it on a slight decline so it won't be toppling over. But that's the basic setup for your barbell hip thrust. So why will the barbell hip thrust always be in my top 3 list when it comes to building glutes, whether it be for men and women? Well, you can't go wrong with it, right? So I say barbell hip thrust, but to be honest, I really don't mind whether it's a barbell, like a glute drive hip thrust machine, or a Smith machine. Personally, I like the Smith machine hip thrust better than using a barbell. A lot of my clients prefer using the Smith machine, more controllable, more stable, and you can kind of keep it a little more consistent as well with your setup when you're using a Smith machine. I just tend to enjoy it more. But equally, if you feel things more, you feel it in your glutes more using a glute drive machine, go with a glute drive machine. If you feel it more using a barbell, go with a barbell, or just kind of chop and change as you kind of change out phases. So you might do 4 weeks with a barbell, 4 weeks with a glute drive, 4 weeks with a Smith machine, for example. Or you might change it out for, I don't know, 4 weeks, 4 weeks with 2 legs, you know, and then 4 weeks with a single leg variation or a B stance variation, for example, and then kind of cycle in. One of the reasons why I really like them is that they're easy to recover from. Now, especially with the women that I train, women tend to like training lower body a little bit more than men, or significantly more than men actually. And if you gave them the choice, most women would like to train lower body 3 days a week. So if you're training lower body 3 days a week and you want to build your glutes, reality is something like a deep barbell back squat. You're just not going to be able to do 3 days a week. You just don't have the ability to recover from exercises like that very well. Whereas at hip thrust, you can do 3, sometimes even 4 days a week if you want to. And that's mostly because it's working that shortened range, you're not loading that stretch position as much, you've not got as much kind of tension production at longer muscle lengths, which is going to create a lot of kind of micro trauma, a lot of DOMs and things like that as well. So you can do them very, very frequently. I also find that people get a good connection with using hip thrusts, or if it's directly off the floor, like a glute bridge, if it's directly off the floor, more so than they can in something like a back squat or a lunge. So it's a really good exercise to build that connection with, but then also people tend to like the building up of weight. You know, it's pretty normal for people to be getting, you know, 450, something like that. You know, strong women can hit, you know, I've had women that I've trained that have hit 450 quite comfortably with this. Obviously, this is more geared towards men, and men tend to struggle a little bit more with this, but I think that's because they don't use it as much, whereas women embrace it. So if there's one kind of take home from this, is that I want men to embrace that hip thrust a little bit more to get the most benefits from it, and obviously, you know, train with it more frequently, which you can't necessarily do with a back squat. So I'm going to throw at you, let's say 3 or 4 different variations of hip thrusts or intensity techniques you can use with hip thrusts. Now give these a go. Hip thrust with a preset iso hold. So you'll start your set with an iso hold in that top, that short range of motion, hold in there. I like about 10 to 20 seconds. Once you've done your 10 to 20 seconds of that hard squeeze, then you do your dynamic reps. So preset iso holds. Hip thrust isometronic. So these combine isometric and isotonic types of muscle contraction. So what you're going to be doing with this one, I like about 7 to 10 reps. So imagine I've done my 7 to 10 full range of motion reps. On that 7 to 10, I'm then going to hold for 7 to 10 seconds. So it's hold, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Once I've done that 7 to 10, I'm then going to hit the lengthened range at the bottom. So for another 7 to 10 pulses at the bottom. And that's one set. Third technique I'm going to show you are hip thrust 21s. There's a few different ways you can do these. Here's how I prefer to do them. So first off, we start with the top part, okay? So 7 reps at the top. So imagine I've done my 7 at the top. I'm then going to do 7 full reps. Once I've done my 7 full reps, I'm going to do 7 partials at the bottom to finish. That's hip thrust 21s, and those are your 3 methods I want you to try. So movement number 2 is a dumbbell walking lunge using the 1 1/4 method. So all we're going to do here, guys, is step out into a walking lunge. As we hit that full range of motion, we're just going to do a little pulse, a 1/4 rep before we come to the top. So here, all the way down, a 1/4 rep, and then drive up most of that weight through that forward leg, at least 70% of that weight through it. Okay, so I've just shown you the dumbbell walking lunge using the 1 1/4 method. Now, the order of exercises, I show 3 exercises in Men's Health. These aren't necessarily my top 3. These are just what I believe a lot of people can benefit from that they're not already using right now. Now, we know that a deep squat can be really, really great. Loads of glutes in that lengthened range of motion at the bottom, if you are able to hit full depth, that is, which just from my experience, a lot of people can't. Now, when people think of squat, they automatically think of barbell back squat. You don't have to barbell back squat. A back squat can mean a hack squat if you wanted it to, right? But I didn't include those. Instead, I chose to include a walking lunge variation. So walking lunge, especially using the 1 1/4 method, means that we can really apply some eccentric load to our glutes, because basically they're working really hard to decelerate you as you're landing with that heel as you step forwards. What we also get is a little bit more activation in that lower glutes region, so kind of that glute ham tie-in area as well. But when we combine that with the 1 1/4 method, that allows us to basically spend more time at the bottom portion of the movement, which loads our glutes the most in that stretch range of motion. So especially kind of triggering that stretch mediated hypertrophy. You know, it's a term that's going around a lot at the moment on social media. It's not really in research, that term, but we all know what it means. It can especially trigger that. So using that 1 1/4 method with our lunges is a really great option. I'm going to share with you 3 more lunge variations that I really think you can benefit from. Dumbbell anterior lunge. This is one I borrowed from Coach Nick Tominello, who calls it an anterior lunge. I tend to just call it a hip dominant lunge. That's exactly what it is. So instead of going into our standard reverse lunge where our torso is going to be upright like so, as we step back, we're going to lean forwards. It's almost like a hybrid between a deadlift and a lunge, okay? So we step back, we lean forwards, and then drive through. So as you'll notice, my shin angle is relatively vertical when I'm stepping back into that lunge. Really big fan of reverse lunges. They're nice and kind of knee friendly, nice and stable as well, but also get that glute and hamstring focus that we want to. So anterior lunges with that lean forwards. Dumbbell curtsy lunge. So all we're going to do here is allow our knee to cross over behind us. So it's a reverse lunge, hiking that knee out into almost a curtsy style position. So cross over that knee behind, step back to that start point. I'll show you a few on the other side. Landmine shouldered lunge. So I've got my landmine unit set up. I've got a fairly light plate on here to start off with. I'm leaning forward into it with that landmine set over my shoulder. I'm going to take a deep reverse lunge backwards, leaning forwards into it and driving with that weight through that front leg. So reverse back, drive forwards and repeat. So we're on to movement number 3 now. So movement number 3 that I shared in the article was a dumbbell high step up. Again, it's one of those exercises where I just don't think enough people are doing them, or a lot of people are doing them but not getting the most out of them. So here's my version of a dumbbell high step up. We do it high because basically it means that our hips go through greater range of motion. So high in my books is anywhere where your thigh, your femur is above parallel, okay, above parallel to the floor. So as you can see, I've just got that slight angle there. So for me, this box is perfect, okay? So from there, what I'm gonna try and do is get most of my weight through that forward leg. I don't mind if that knee angle, that shin angle comes a little bit forwards just to make sure you've got some weight on there. And I'm gonna show you a few different variations of this in a second, which are more kind of vertical shins. So most of our weight through that front leg. We've got dumbbells, start lighter than what you think, because if you're doing them correctly, you won't need a lot of weight. Minimal pressing through that bottom leg, and all you're gonna do is get to that top point in a lot of control, and then control that descent back down to the floor. So here, control that eccentric, which is arguably more important, and then repeat. Again, trying to minimize that press with your back foot off the floor. So dumbbell step up, why have I included these? Well, again, just like the hip thrust, it's one of those exercises you can do relatively frequently, you can recover from pretty fast, and you get a good growth stimulus from it. Also, as I obviously mentioned before, a lot of people I don't feel are getting the most out of them. So immediately switching up your technique to what I've just shown you there, where you're mostly getting load through your front leg, you're focusing on full range of motion, really stretching those glutes, getting that deep hip range of motion. Even if that means lifting a little bit lighter, then you're gonna be getting a lot more out of them. Now, look, I get it, I understand it when a lot of people just don't like doing step-ups because they don't feel them working. And especially, look, we're talking about glutes here. A lot of people don't really feel this exercise in their glutes. But when's the last time you felt, for example, a deep back squat in your glutes? You don't really feel those stretch focus exercises in your glutes. So again, this is another great option to load your glutes in that lengthen, that stretch range of motion, which is an alternative to having to back squat all the time. You're not having to use anywhere near the load, and arguably you might be getting a better growth stimulus from it, or at least including some single leg work, which a lot of us need, especially if we're athletes. I'm going to show you 2 ways to change up your step ups or make them feel a little bit better. First off, I'm just going to show you a little hack. Now, if you find that you're pressing with that back foot off the floor, i.e. you're doing your step ups, you're pressing too much off of that back foot, then just try this. So all I've done is just put a nice light plate on the floor, and then my back heel only is on that plate. So as you can see, kind of the knuckles of my feet aren't touching the floor, okay? So I can set myself up there. My heel is on the plate. So I'm just gonna give you a quick demo. So when I get to the top, I'm trying not to press with my toes, which obviously the plate doesn't allow me to do anyway. So I'm getting most of that weight through that front leg. I'm up to that top point. I'm just using this for balance, obviously. And then when I come back down, I'm just going to show you very, very slowly. I'm trying to get my heel to land first on there instead of the knuckles of my feet, okay? So it's heel only, up to the top. As I reverse, I'm trying to get my heel to touch first. So here, heel first, okay? So that's one little hack you can use with yourself or with your clients if you struggle, your clients struggle with pressing too much off that back foot. Here are two other very simple variations of step-ups that I really like and you should try. I just call these glute and hamstring focused step-ups. You won't need any weight with these, or if you do, very, very small amount of weight. So I'm basically gonna keep my shins back. I'm then gonna use a rack for support, or you can use a Smith machine. You can just set the bar kind of to chest level in the Smith machine, hands on there. So I'm all the way back here, and I think of it like a scoop with your hamstrings and up, okay? So it's here, and then to that top point. So coming back, shins come back, nice long position, and then through. Nice long position, and through. You can see I'm getting a lot of range of motion in my hips here, taking my hamstrings and my glutes into a nice stretch position as well. As I said, you won't need a lot of weight with this one, if any. Second alternative step-up variation I'm going to show you is a lateral crossover variation. You can use support with this one. I do like support with this one personally, and then just loading with a dumbbell on one side, or you can kind of do this freestanding. You can do this with a low box, high box. I'm using a high box here. So there's a few different kind of takes on this one. So idea being, I've got my knee hiked out towards the side. So I'm starting to the side of the box or the bench, and I'm stepping on from the side. So I'm here, I'm really crossing over, get as much stretch laterally in that glute as I can, and then step on. So stretch into it and step on. Stretch into it, step on. If I want a dumbbell, I'm gonna hold it here. I think you get the point. So I've just taken you through 3 different exercises that I've shared with you on page 71 in my interview in the Jan-Feb of Men's Health. I've also taken you through multiple different variations and ways you can use those exercises. My idea here is to inspire more men to be training their booty, because they're going to be receiving multiple benefits from it, not just from an aesthetic standpoint and to banish that pancake, but from an athletic standpoint as well as kind of injury prevention, low back pain and things like that. The benefits to building your booty are endless. So more men need to get involved. Hopefully you've kind of been inspired here. You've found some movements that you might enjoy and integrate within your own training. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed today's YouTube. Check out previous videos as well. There's plenty to like on the Elite Physique training page, and make sure you do subscribe.